Haven't done this in a while.
I know. So we are back. It's been a while since we've been doing some podcasting, but we thought, we have a little bit of extra time these days. There's been a few updates in our current situation, so we just thought, hey, we might as well go and it's a good time to do some podcasting, yeah?
I agree. After 5 hours of talking?
Mm-hmm. That's what you call like the preliminary. We had to get a lot of things off our chest. We haven't actually like talked on the phone or in person. And how long has it been?
When was the last time we went to the buffet? In
Over
March?
A month ago, yeah.
Like maybe mid-March?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's been a minute since we've actually gotten together. But Daniel mentioned our buffet, our ritual. We call it a ritual because we usually go at least once a week.
You make it seem like we're in like dark robes and it's a ritual. We're walking into the Asian buffet.
Let me tell you why. It's a ritual because we start a specific way with our eating. Right? It's not like you go to a buffet and you just fill up a bunch of things on the plate and take it back.
That's true.
We do start off with our soup and we start off with our sushi rolls and a little bit of salad and some fruit maybe. And then we get into the other foods at the buffet. So I call it a ritual.
It kind of is. And it's funny because they always say that rituals, everybody doesn't really recognize that they have rituals every day. And they say that certain research points that if we don't have set rituals, like we'll tend to go crazy. And so it's like what is it that you do when you first get out of bed? Like what side of bed do you usually sleep on?
Right.
Like when you take a shower, what order do you do everything? And when you comb your hair, what side do you start combing your hair? So we all have certain rituals. Like myself, my rituals like also going to like Starbucks every day or
he goes every day,
twice a day, sometimes twice a day. Yeah, so it's not so much about Starbucks, even though they probably have some magical spell on me. Go buy their berry hibiscus tea. But I do have my own rituals, and they do help. And I think that research is probably true to a certain degree.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you, I guess, a sense of normalcy. Even going to a hotel. Like when I go to a hotel, I still kind of carry a lot of routines to the hotel, like the shower or setting up my bed, even though it's not my bed, setting up the pillows. I actually always take my own pillow with me because I can't sleep on other hotels' pillows. So I do take my own pillow. So I do really kind of try and make it as my home. I'll set up my toiletries on the counter like the same way they're set up at home. So I don't think that's OCD though, right?
A little bit.
A little bit.
I take it you don't have a My Pillow.
I don't know. Mainly because of the guy who created it. No. The guy who created the pillow on his picture with his big cross.
Oh, I didn't see that, but I did see him when he was on the conference. Well, that's very interesting that you have a routine even when you go out places. I don't know if I do have that. I know that people sometimes carry things with them and they're more superstitious than others and things like that, but I'm not there,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I mean, there's just like you said, the morning routines. I mean, those are pretty a set thing probably for most people, but with what we're going to be talking about today being a new normal, I guess we really kind of want to talk about what does the new normal look like for us. And kind of how are we navigating that new normal in today's new situation? So obviously, it's no secret on what the situation is because we are all living it regardless of what part of the country you're in. You're being affected by the coronavirus.
COVID-19.
Okay, we're going to be very scientific about it. We're not going to be inserting a meme here right now. the coronavirus, what the coronavirus is. I think it's safe to say it has nothing to do with a Mexican beer, right? It doesn't have anything to do with a crown on your head, right?
No.
Okay. So I think everybody's in pretty, has been affected by COVID-19. And so some of us are still working, some of us are not. I am one of I'm going to call myself fortunate ones who are not working right now because I get to be in the safety of my home. If even though it's a construction zone right now, it's still a safety zone for me. But with you're still not working out on the field, but you're still working. What's that looking like?
I'm still working. To be honest with you, I'm kind of burnt out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that, I think in a lot of ways, I think people, whether they like it or not, these breaks kind of make them reflect on, what they want out of life. And for myself, not that I don't like my job or anything like that, but I was expecting a vacation sometime soon or a little break. Yeah. And right now I see a lot of people, on kind of quasi vacations. It's kind of weird to watch because, all of a sudden I see a lot of people in my neighborhood. They're taking walks. They have their dogs, taking the walks with their dogs. I see people doing bicycle family rides. It's like I see all these, and they all seem to be happy. I don't see anybody distressed or nothing. And myself, I still have to work, so I still have to punch in and out. Not only that, since we're working out of our home, we have to kind of consolidate our day, hour by the hour, exactly what we're doing. And so these things kind of do stress you out.
Have you ever worked from home before?
No.
It's your first time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I do my photography work and all that, of course, but it's different because I'm self-employed and I could go wherever I want. But this whole thing about they're not micromanaging us at all, but it's just still this is what I feel. Okay. I know it's kind of veering off a little bit, but when you sign a document, stating that that's what you're going to get paid because you agreed to show up to work at certain times and certain hours, that does something to you psychologically. And it's in the back of your mind. So that's why I say there's a lot of people that, I hate my job, and they complain about the job, and then all of a sudden they quit their job or they get fired. Then all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I feel 100 times better, and it's because you get trapped into a contract. So I know we're not going to be talking about no crazy stuff, but when you sign your name, that's a contract. Yeah. And it does steal or contribute to your energy depending on whether you're happy or not in a job. Right. And so right now in this weird quarantine, your foot's neither there or over there, you're not fired, but yet you're hanging on. Yeah. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I've never worked from home, but you think that, it's such a great thing. I'm at home, I could be in my calzones, I could be taking a conference call, but like you said, there's still that idea of I'm clocking in and out still. I still have to be responsible for responding to this email or being on this phone call. So, I mean, is it really, all that it's cracked up to be? You hear people, I work from home, it's so great, blah, blah, blah. Is it really?
Well, it is if the world is functioning, what I'm saying? I work from home. Oh, must be nice, But like you mentioned, it's not the same when... It's kind of like what I say. It's kind of like everybody is in a different situation, but it's safe to say that a lot of people are at home and they're not out there working. And myself, I'm one of those people that, we're at home, but I have to perform. I have to bring it, when I go and work over the phone or we're doing teleconferencing and stuff like that. And it's draining.
Yeah. Well, I unfortunately cannot relate because I am not working anywhere nor from home. I was furloughed from my job in retail, so I am neither here nor there.
You're in purgatory.
I know. I am. I'm in my own I want to call it my private heaven, my own
Okay.
heaven. Okay. Because, what we're going to be talking about today is really how are we handling this current situation? Are we being accepting of it or working against it? And how is it impacting us? Because I think that, we're focused on the economical consequences of not working and not being able to to just go to the store and buy our things that we might need or we want to buy, or that we're not getting a regular paycheck, or just used to our regular rituals or routines
or regular scheduled program.
Yes.
Oh, there we go.
Exactly,
the program we were talking about.
Exactly. See, so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today, is just kind of how are we navigating this, and how is it really impacting us more so from a psychological and emotional, like what kind of impact is this having on us? And I think obviously everybody handles the new normal differently. Some people are taking longer to adapt, or some aren't adapting at all, or some are just, retreating in different ways. How are you? I'm asking you directly. How are you handling the new normal? Psychologically, emotionally, kind of the new everyday.
I think I go in my ups and downs, to be quite honest. Like I think that in the most part I'm handling it great, and I don't want to be too happy because I know that there's people out there that are not feeling it and they're struggling with it and they're having a real hard time with it. I kind of stay home anyways as it is, and I just go out as needed. But the thing that really bothers me right now is actually my work. It's kind of crazy that my work itself is really what's bringing a lot of stress. And it's only because I see a different kind of reflection going on for myself. Like I want to have some free time and, some days off and sleep in and things like that. But it's kind of like we're hanging on, at least with my job, we're hanging on to something that is neither there or that it is there. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of that whole feeling of not being fully there is bothering me. And so it's kind of like I have to practice a lot of the coping skills that I teach other people to practice. That way I could, not get stuck in a situation that I don't want to be in. And I think what's helped me a lot is doing physical activities. And what worked for me, for example, is I'm working on my yard, and I tilled the yard and I started raking it because I'm going to install some grass. And I lasted 7.5 hours outside and in the sun doing laborious work. And that actually made me feel better. It got my mind off of the news. It got my mind off of other people's problems, this is a really interesting element that we haven't talked about today. I don't know if people remember, but my field is in counseling. So my job is to give counsel and therapy to individuals. So imagine what I do is all mental work. So I have to be in my mind all the time and providing solutions or helping others find solutions for themselves. And so that's a lot of mental energy that gets stuck in your mind. Then what happens is that I have my routine, going back to routines, that aren't like adequate for, at least in quarantine, for me to spend some of that mental energy. So by accident, I've come to realize that my yard actually presented a solution for myself, or working out is providing I might say a solution for myself. But other than that, I would think I would be going crazy working teleconferencing, counseling, therapeutic things. That's just crazy now.
That's the thing. It's like, like you said, you have to find something that's going to work for relieving the stress. I think a lot of people in the first couple of weeks are really just like, I'm just going to watch TV. I'm going to sit on my couch. They're kind of resorting to just maybe old things that they would go to chill out. And it's like, okay, it's going on 4 weeks. It's like, okay, that's not going to work anymore. You have to find something more that's going to stimulate you physically, emotionally, mentally. So I think that, it's really important to find something that's going to provide, because you don't have your regular stimulation of being around people, or interacting the same way that you did with your friends and family. I have a lot of friends who are very outgoing, and a lot of friends who are very introverts. And, I've been talking to them a lot about how is this affecting them, because, I would think that people who are extroverts, who like to be homebodies, like this is their heaven. It's like everybody's staying home. Everybody's, chilling out and just being a homebody. And then I would think that the extroverts would be more affected because they need that human interaction and stuff. And I've actually found the quite opposites. Like my extroverts are finding a really good time with, taking an inward moment. As introverts do that often, they're by themselves more. They have more time to reflect and think. And right now it's like the introverts are kind of struggling with it a little and being like, this is not, now that it's kind of an imposed thing as opposed to self-imposed, where it's like, oh, I just stay home because I choose to. Now it's like, no, you have to stay home. Now it's kind of like there's no option there to go out every once in a while or to go socialize with your friends and family. And I think, I'm seeing that they're having a little bit more trouble with it, when I thought that they'd be like in heaven, that everybody stays home and we just contact each other through text message because I don't like to be around people. But like with me, I consider myself somebody who's an extrovert, and I really enjoy being around people and socializing, like having dinner parties, and I like to hang out with my friends. But for me, I just really took a pause moment and been like, okay, this is a moment, this is happening for a reason, and I have to go with the moment. I have to not work against the moment, but go with it. Because if I try and fight the moment, then I will become stressed out, depressed, feeling isolated. So I have to ride the wave of the moment. And a lot of what this has taught me during this time is I'm trying to be a lot of being present, living in the moment. And I don't think I'd be able to do that if I was focused on the negative aspect of what we're going through right now. So I've really found this time to be very self-reflective and to really kind of look deeper into myself and really try and understand what living in the moment is. Like, what does that mean to you? Because we talk about that. I mean, me and Daniel have all these off podcast conversations that kind of lead up to these podcasts that we do. So obviously we've delved in deeper with a lot of living in the present moment. What does that mean for you in this particular time that we're living in?
Well, it's crazy because like I mentioned, like I don't want to be like insensitive. Not that I always have to say that, right?
No comment.
I know, no comment. But I don't see what's going on as a bad thing. I at least for my life and what I'm going through, I don't see, except for the annoyance of my job. That's more of an annoyance. But I don't see it as a bad thing because I've already in the past have already went through that painful journey of solitude and self-reflection and figuring out who I am. It appears from what I've seen from my experience, and I work in the counseling field, so I see it all the time. It doesn't have to be during a quarantine. That the people that have the most difficult times are the ones that haven't had any kind of reflection of who exactly they are. Yeah. Like, what's my purpose? Why am I here for? What's life about? And a quarantine is just like it's like a spiritual detox that is being forced upon the masses. And it's making people realize that things are not as what they are, And so when you have that time of self-reflection, you start to really delve deep inside of who you are and ask yourself questions that you might have always maybe put in the back of your mind, or you might have not been like fully aware. And that is painful for a lot of people. And so it's not a shock that I make the relation that the people that are freaking out are the people that haven't asked themselves these questions.
I agree.
They have a hard time to figuring out what self means, what their higher self, entails, what the purpose of their existence is.
Yeah.
And I know these are loaded questions, but what better time to ask them than right now?
I agree. 100%. I agree, because the mind is so intricate. It allows, just as much as it allows negative thoughts to creep in and to, what we like to call the ego, that self-doubt, that inner voice that is not really existent, but we tend to acknowledge it very greatly. We can allow a more positive narrative to come in. And I think that we need to really, like you mentioned, the higher self. The higher self can only be heard by doing what?
Being still.
Exactly. We were talking about Eckhart Tolle, because I'm currently listening to his book, The New Earth, and he uses an example of a monk who, one of his students, they're eating lunch over by a mountainside, and the student asks the monk, he asks him, how do I find inner peace? How do I find, what's the word I'm trying to use? How do I
enlightenment?
How do I find enlightenment? And he pauses for a moment. He doesn't say anything, and then he tells him, have you heard the stream of water nearby? And he goes, no. And he goes, listen. So the student stays quiet, doesn't speak, and he after a few minutes, he goes, I hear it. He goes, that's your answer. He goes, you quieted your mind, you quieted, everything. You quieted all your senses, and you were able to actually hear the stream running nearby. And I think that we're not hearing the stream. We're not taking the moment to listen to the stream nearby. I've been taking a lot of long walks lately, and, I kind of live in the ghetto, but the surrounding area is really beautiful. There's some historic homes. There's some really nice landscaping, and, there's some nice areas, and I really am taking the time to enjoy. Everything's blooming right now. I know you're not enjoying that because of your allergies. But, it's like, the beauty of nature. The air is much cleaner, I think, because, pollution, there's less pollution with less people driving and out and about and creating pollution. I mean, the air has been so much cleaner. I don't know, has it been cleaner for your allergies?
Yeah,
but still, I can't open this window though. Right, I
wouldn't recommend it. I still drive with my windows up.
Yeah, I know he does. But so I'm trying to listen for the stream. I'm trying to listen for the higher self voice as opposed to the ego voice, because the ego voice is so at a local level, if that makes sense. It's so easy to access, like tune into that station. It's so quick to tune in that it's like, it's just easier to go there than it is to go and take the time to listen to like the higher message that your higher self is telling you.
Yeah. And the thing about, like we were mentioning earlier today, is that your higher self will never compete for your attention. And if that's the case, then you have to stay still, and you have to figure out a way to reduce all that mental chatter that is always mostly just unnecessary to a certain degree. You think to yourself, how many times do we think of a certain pattern throughout the day? Especially when we're stressed. When we're stressed, we're stuck on those loops, you know.
Yeah.
And right now, yes, there's a lot of difficulties with finance and work and just all this negative projection of what the future might be. But right now, it's most likely, at least in my opinion, a perfect opportunity to reevaluate what kind of life we want to live once things start back, you know, once they restart the economy and once people go back to work and things like that. Because, you know, there's a lot of different possibilities that can happen. And so, but it's kind of like when they said, like, oh, yeah, back in the crash of '08 and, you know, look at all that stuff happened and blah, blah, blah. And I remember hearing one time some guy say, what's important is not the economy, it's your economy. And so that's the whole thing about mostly everything that we do. It's like, it's having that time of self-reflection where we see ourselves as a whole of like things that we need to kind of like address within ourselves and see whether we're okay in these little sectors. It's like your mental health, your emotional health, your physical, spiritual. How good are you doing right now in those aspects? You know, are you seeing that you feel like life is pretty scary and like things are falling apart in the world and you're not vibing with the world right now? Well, that sounds like a spiritual problem.
Yeah.
You know, do you have too much mental chatter and your head hurts and you're overthinking things? That's a mental problem. Emotionally, you find yourself always sad and stressed out and you want to cry. Emotional issues, you know. And physically, you have insomnia, you can't go to sleep, you know, you're gaining some weight, you know, in the quarantine. Obviously we're all eating, and so not enough exercise, you're not drinking enough water. That's a physical issue. And so it's good to have some kind of inventory of these things that would help align our like spiritual self in a way, like our spirit is what I mean, into a better trajectory of what a different possibility of what life could be like compared to what we have been programmed to believe that our life is. Right. And this is a great reset, I think, for many people.
Yeah, that's something that we have really been talking about today, is the big reset. It's like, you know, if we're just looking at it at a surface level, a reset, you know, we can be, you know, it's a reset for our economy. It's going to affect, you know, from what you were hoping is that this is going to be a reset for our economy, to, you know, to get back and be more prosperous than ever. You know, I was talking to Daniel earlier and talking to him about how during World War II, you know, the country really, this was like, you know, had been a big crisis for them, and, you know, kind of how the country just really came together and had this new kind of patriotism. And, you know, it was a prosperous time after World War II, you know, with the troops coming back. And it was just it was such a, you know, it was everybody's mindset, you know, it was great for the economy, of course, but I think people's mindset was in a different place where they were able to accept and really enjoy the prosperity that the economy was having. So that's kind of what I'm hoping for this, you know, this time that we're having with the COVID-19, that we're going to come out of it like refreshed and renewed. And that's my hope, you know. Of course, if you following, you know, the mass media and, you know, I don't know that that's the narrative that is really being put out there, but, you know, we have to create our own narrative for ourselves that's going to work for our situation. And that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm hoping for. But for deeper than that, at a spiritual and emotional level, like Daniel said, we're just really trying to use this time to do some inner reflection, and hopefully, you know, once things get back to what our new normal is, I don't think that this is going to be, anything's going to go back to the way that it was before. You know, in all respects of life, not just our economy, but just our everyday outlook and our everyday routines are gonna look different, you know. So I'm hoping that this is gonna be a reset, you know, for me spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and that's kind of what I'm taking from the situation, and I'm just going with it. And that's you know, I'm not putting too much expectation, because every day changes. You know, every day changes, and that's part of, for me, you know, being present and being in the moment.
Yeah. It reminds me of what I would tell my students back when I used to teach. I would tell them all the time, and I would remind them. I would say, you guys, you're going to graduate one day, okay? And when you're out in the real world, you're going to realize something. And they're like, what are we going to realize? And I'm like, you're going to realize, and I want you to remember this forever, okay? So I told them, life doesn't get easier. It gets better. And I would always remind them throughout the school year, hey, you guys, life doesn't get easier. It gets better. And until they finally got it, right? And I was trying to really instill to them that, you know, when you're young, everybody does everything for you, and you're very protected, and you know you're living kind of in a little box. And when you graduate, you all of a sudden become an adult, and you're out there and you're doing things. And you're going to have to do your own doctor's appointments and go to the DMV and get your own grocery and things like that. So in a sense, life doesn't get easier, right? You get more responsibilities. But it does get better, because now you have freedom of movement. You have freedom of choice. You could date whoever you want. You could form a family and have kids. You could start a business. There's so many possibilities that will make your life better. So what we're going through right now is kind of the same thing as what I used to tell my students back in the day. It's just like we're going through a period of time that we're in a box. And when this box, you know, lifts, you know, yes, life is not going to be easier, but it could get better.
About it?
It could be. It could be. I mean, you know me. I have more of a, I don't know how to call it, kind of perspective. But I would say, I mean, if I had to throw a jab at this and see like what I think is going to happen, I think things are going to get a little bit more difficult before they get better. Yeah. And I think it's going to really test people's resiliency. And what I advocate all the time is for people to be stronger people. Like the way that I would tell my students, if life doesn't get easier and it gets better, what do you have to do so that you can meet that challenge? And everybody says, well, I have to be better, right? Yeah. So I have to be better so that I can have a better life. It's like, yeah, that's exactly the formula. You could have said it better. Right. Right. So right now, it's not only just a time of self-reflection and, you know, thinking about the universe and, you know, having late nights of just conversations. It's also a time to prepare and make sure that you have everything that you need, not only to weather the storm that's coming or that is here. Who knows, you know, how long this might take, but that you could resist anything that comes your way, and that when you come out of this, you'll be able to restart your life however you choose to restart your life. I would encourage you to really start thinking about what kind of life you want to restart. Yeah. You know, do you even want to go back to the same kind of lifestyle and life that you've had? Maybe there's people out there that just all they were doing is just partying and having fun and like messing around and all this stuff. And is that really what you want? You know, or a workaholic and that's all I do and I never see my kids and blah, 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 or being in the wrong job. You know, that sucks, being in the wrong job, right? Is that what you want? Coming back into the, you know, into your own reality. Right.
I mean, that is, you know, that's trying to find the silver lining in the situation. It's like you say you would have never experienced certain things or been able to remove yourself from certain situations had this not happened. You know, if you were working in a job that you really didn't like, maybe this time gave you an opportunity to realize, you know what, I really am in the wrong job. Or you know what, it gave you the opportunity to realize I really appreciate that I have a job, or that I have, or being able to appreciate the job because you're no longer there. You know, it's like you step away from the situation, you could really see it for what it is, because when you're in it, you know, it's a lot harder to see. And you know, to your point, saying, you know, it's going to get better, it's like you can't you will never know how resilient you are, or how strong you are if you're not forced to struggle. If things don't get bad for you, then how will you know how resilient or how strong you are if you're never given the opportunity to see? You know, it's like I have been, you know, I consider myself a strong person. So I didn't have any fear of the situation happening, but there was a sense of, you know, there was a little sense of worry. There was just, so for me, it kind of was like, hey, you know, I am a little bit more softer about things than I thought. You know, I thought like, this is, you know, this too shall pass. And, you know, very much that kind of attitude. But there were moments where I was feeling a little bit worried about, you know, things. And that just shows that I still have, you know, there's still some unexplored areas, you know, of who we think we are, some preconceived notions of who people think we are. So definitely a lot of self-reflection, no doubt.
I would say so. I think not to beat the dead horse on this, right? But I think it's time to shed that skin, you know, and just like, hey, this used to be who I was, and it's not really fitting for me anymore. I outgrew this. I have to do something different. And what I would always, you know, suggest, and this is not just because of a quarantine, I do this, you know, for a living, it's just really challenge people to get out of their comfort level and communicate better with the people around them and have better relationships than they've ever dreamed of having, and forming connections that are meaningful. I've always, you know, these are all little talking points that I've always had. And there's no better time than right now. If you have something to tell somebody, there's no better time than saying it right now. You know, and this is the ultimate like spiritual detox that I have ever seen in my lifetime happening right now all over the world. It is incredible. We just have to entrust that things are going to be okay, and that when we choose to set voyage into another type of life in the future, that we all do it together, and that you know, we unify as a world community, and we make things happen that have never been seen in our world. Because what it seems is that our in our humanity, in our consciousness, we're operating at very like infant level consciousness. And so we still see a lot of greed and wars and like just so many things that we could get rid of. And right now is actually a pretty good time to reevaluate these things and figure out how we stop these things. You know, because they've been a real big problem in our history of humanity.
So you're saying you're talking about reevaluating things on a global scale, on a bigger scale than just ourselves.
Yes.
But yeah, that's definitely a good point, to really examine, you know, as a people, as a country, you know, examine it on a bigger scale. I mean, the first thing that came to my mind when you said that was like, you know, really what you know, I guess our biggest testing point is going on social media and kind of seeing people all over the country and kind of how, you know, how they're handling the situation. What are you seeing out there that kind of like stands out to you?
The number one thing that I see is how nobody cares about celebrities. Nobody gives a shit about them. And it's rightfully so.
Yeah.
Like, who's the ones that are complaining the most on social media? It's celebrities in their mansions and how they feel so trapped in like a 30,000 square foot property with basketball courts and chefs, and it's just so unreal to see. And so what's happening, and me, I've been a big proponent of this 2012 thing that happened years ago. And what I feel happened during those times was that there was the lifting of the veil. And so we're seeing a lot of that. That's where all these protests all over the world started happening, in Greece and the Middle East. And you do realize that right before this COVID-19, there was like weeks and weeks and of protests in France and in Hong Kong and China and it was crazy. Well, that's part of the spiritual awakening that's happening all over the world. There is something that has happened within the last 10 years that is waking up people by the thousands. Hundreds of thousands of people are waking up. And what that looks like is painful. You start to realize that the people that were in charge, or the people that made the laws, or the people that governed our nations weren't the most righteous people. And they start getting exposed. That's what I'm talking about too, as on a global level. What can we do that when we start unifying again as people, how do we, reconcile all of these bad things that have been happening in the world? And how do we make a different kind of system that works for everybody in their own respective countries? Obviously, I'm not into that whole, international globalism or anything like that. I think every country would be able to have their own spiritual awakening that is appropriate to their culture, And I think that it all starts with the self. It's like you have to do your own legwork so you could participate in what's happening in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think that you take a look at yourself, and then you take a look at the world you're living in. You're like, my this is my surroundings. This is what I'm being affected by, because it's kind of, you were taken out of the situation for a moment in time, where you can really look at it. God, what kind of world am I living in? What kind of city am I living in? What kind of state am I living in? So I think that, the self-reflection has also allowed us to really take a good look at our surroundings and what kind of society we're living in. How are we contributing or not contributing to it? I think it's definitely on so many levels. It's going to be so, I think we're going to see another wave of awakenings, that people are going to really be conscious of their living, of what kind of life they're living, or lack thereof,
Yeah, one of the things, examples I like sharing with people is the example of living in darkness. So in a sense, humanity has been living in darkness. Yeah, there's a lot of people that were conscious of what was going on in the world, but I think in the majority, a lot of people have been living in darkness. And when you make that as, what does that mean as an individual? Consciously within your own mind, when you close your eyes and you're there by yourself privately in your own thoughts, if you're living in darkness, certain situations like these, or maybe like losing a job or a relationship or somebody passing away or something usually triggers somebody to wake up. And what it's the equivalent is like living in a home in darkness for a very long time, and you're not upkeeping anything in your home. And so the minute that somebody opens a window or a door and they let some light in there, they're going to see how dusty it's been. It's like, well, how long have you dusted your own thoughts and beliefs and what you think is a value of, for yourself? When have you really challenged your own way of thinking or your own perspectives? And a person that's lived in darkness will come to find that when they turn on the lights, they see a bunch of disorder in their own inner world. And that's where people start freaking out, because they're like, oh, damn, I didn't know that I was an asshole all my life, or I didn't know I'm in a toxic relationship, or I'm too hard on my kids, or whatever it is. That is a reflection of our inner world. Our outer world is always going to be a reflection of our inner world. Yeah. And right now, it's being reflected towards us. And right now is the most important time to reflect back something that is worthwhile, and in each of us contribute something that is meaningful and worthwhile back into society when all this starts to reopen again, per se.
Yeah, it's just really just a very unique time. That's the only way to put it. It's just so, I have moments throughout the day where I'm just like, oh, I'm going to go do this, or, and then you just realize that, because I look outside my window, I see kids running around, riding their bike. I see the mailman out there, so I just think, I was living probably in a week of delusion, like, oh, this is just like a little break. This is like, oh, and I was still like going to places that were still open, just doing the regular routine. And that was from 2 weeks ago to today. That's a different world to me already. That is an alternate reality, and that's the thing. It's crazy. Think a lot of people think that in reverse. They think this right now is an alternate reality. That is an alternate reality, because that is no more.
That's crazy.
And that is, a hard pill to swallow. But for me, like I said, if I just accept that this is the new reality, then it just becomes, I'm able to really live in that environment, and not just be like somebody observing it, like watching it on TV. Like, I think a lot of people are watching this reality through TV or through the media, and they're thinking, oh, this is like some weird shit going on. But you know what? This is the new shit. This is the real shit that's going on.
It's the real.
Yeah. And so that's my getaway of perspective of looking at it. It's like 2 weeks ago, what is now the alternate reality, So that's just like, and I had that moment where I had to make that switch. There was a switch that happened,
And a lot of people haven't had that switch. That's what's crazy about it. But I would say that, the two things that I would say as advice is, do not be scared. Scared, being frightened and scared, and any negative emotion brings your vibration so low, and it actually makes you sick. Yeah. And this is not the time to be sick. This is the time to, raise your vibration and be healthy. Yeah. What I used to tell my students would be, don't be afraid of yourself. When you go deep into your own inner self, and you start seeing things that, oh my God, where did this gremlin come from? Right. Just know that you could kick that gremlin to the side. You might have some inner demons that might be some pretty big, and they might be ready to come out. But I would suggest getting some help with that. Don't take it on by yourself, because this kind of environment triggers a lot of inner things going on. Yeah. But as a teenager, when you explain to a little kid or a teenager that whatever you do when you grow up, don't ever be afraid of yourself, that still applies to an adult. Because being afraid of yourself kind of limits you on your growth. You're not going to be able to tap into higher frequencies of understanding or of comprehension if we live in a state of fear. Right. So yes, there is a lot of crazy stuff happening, and I agree. And yes, do I believe things are going to get a little bit more complicated as time passes, forward. But there's no better time than now than to grow instead of being paralyzed. If we're paralyzed, we are going to ride through this unprepared, and it's going to be very painful.
Yeah, it's the phrase that always comes into, and I think a lot of people don't really understand it, because for a long time I didn't understand the concept of this too shall pass. And there's actually,
Is that Lord of the Rings?
No, well,
I'm just kidding.
It's actually Eckhart Tolle.
Oh, okay, that's true.
Yeah, he talks about what it actually means, and I fully understood it. That we say, oh, this too shall pass, meaning, oh, there's better times ahead. That's like the surface level thought about it. But the only what the true meaning of the saying is that the only time that you're guaranteed is the present. Right now, we can be having a great time. This too shall pass, though.
Yeah.
There's not always going to be good times.
Mm-hmm.
There's going to be bad times. But you know what? That too shall pass.
It should.
Yeah, the only thing that you're guaranteed is this the very moment that you're living in right now. And so I think of that. I think, you know what? There's going to be good times ahead, but those will pass too. And there'll be harder times ahead. And there will be even better times ahead, because those are the only things that we're guaranteed.
Yeah. And to piggyback on that, it's like one of the things that I really like about one of his quotes is he says, when there's no way out, there's always a way through. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes people feel like, damn, like I don't want to tackle this because I feel like there's no way out. I'm stuck. Well, there's always a way through things.
Right.
And I believe that in a sense, we're always presented an opportunity to connect to our inner self in our present moment. And that shouldn't be taken lightly, because when you tap into your present moment, what that is, it's like where the factory is. Everything that you could imagine in your own inner factory, your creativity, your self-love, the love you have for other people, your devotion, your inspiration, your imagination, all happens in the now, in the present moment. That is where your factory is. So if you're producing things just like a factory does, it's like, what are you producing? Are you producing weapons of war in your factory in the form of stress and anger and resentment and all this stuff? Or what kind of factory, thoughts are you producing? Are you producing positive, encouraging words, or conversations, or creativity? So nothing that you could ever do escapes the now. So the now is the place that everything happens. And what's cool about it is that, and Eckhart Tolle talks a lot about this. I really like that author, is that your present moment follows you wherever you go throughout your life. Right. So this moment, as where we're talking, it's going to end. And I'm going to go and I can get in my car and I'm going to go home and probably go get berry hibiscus again, for a second time at Starbucks. You're
not going to be able to sleep tonight.
I know. And my present moment follows me as well as yours. You probably take the dog out, for a walk, or, cook something or whatever you choose to do. And that's what's powerful about our present moment. Absolutely. To be aware of it at all times and have it follow us deeply in what we do. Right. Because that gets us closer to our inner purpose, our inner strength, our true power as individuals. Not thinking about this imaginary future that is not here, or this past that's already long and gone.
Yeah. One of the things he says is you can't create the future without being in the present. So there's
true.
It's no, so like this current situation, I apply that. If I'm focused on the past, which was the Twilight Zone 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago when I was working, being with my people out in the street, socializing, and I'm focused on that, I'm not living in the present. If I'm focused on the future, when is this economy going to open? When am I going to go back to work? Those answers are haven't yet been answered. So I'm I'm missing out on the middle part of it, which is the present part. I'm focused back here in the twilight zone. I'm focused in the future on when am I going back to work, or when is this going to be over with, that I am missing the moment that I'm here doing this podcast. You know? Yeah. I'm missing out on actually like the most important thing, which is being in the present moment, not living in the past, and not going too far in the future. And this moment, why would I be thinking about what I'm going to do in an hour from now? You know what I'm saying? Even people listening to this podcast, it's like it's either you're fully engaged in the podcast or you're doing something else. Like Tole says, you can't be in two places at once. Yeah, exactly. Like I like to watch people when I'm talking to them, because I always, when I talk to people, I try and look at them so that they know that I'm really like in the moment with them, listening to them, acknowledging them. I look at people when I'm talking to them, or just when they're talking to somebody else and they're not even looking at the person. They're clearly in the outer space. They're somewhere else. Yeah. Whether it's in the past or it's somewhere happening in the future, they are not at that moment. And I kind of always look at that as an indicator to be like, are you with me right now? Mm-hmm. Are you here? Because if you're not even looking at, you can't even do a simple eye contact, that means you are living somewhere else. I know. I used to do that to my students all the time. I used a lot of Eckhart Tolle techniques on them without them knowing. I'm like, got them. Like they didn't even know. And so it was interesting and awesome to see their reactions. But yeah, sometimes they were talking to me and they're like, I'm like, you're not really paying attention to me right now, huh? It's like, how'd you know? It's like, well, I just know. Obvious. Been doing this for 20 years. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, we're talking a lot about Eckhart Tolle, and, I was introduced to Eckhart Tolle before Oprah, because I know how you feel about Oprah. Oh, I love Oprah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Uh-huh. If you could only see Daniel's face right now. But, rolling my eyes. But, back in my days as a ghost hunter and a spiritualist, my more spiritualist days, that's when I really got into Eckhart Tolle and a lot of the self-help movement and living in the present. So recently I did kind of get back into that, because I have the time and more importantly for me, I can focus on it. Part of like focus is being in the present for me, because I like to be, I'm the type of person naturally who likes to have a lot of things on his plate. He has a lot of projects. He's doing this, he's doing that. And it's like doing all of that on top of working a full-time job. It's like, I always see that as like one of my weaknesses and one of my strengths. Does that make any sense at all? But that's how I view that part of who I am. And so I've really been trying to being able to focus on one thing at a time and kind of seeing what does that yield? It's like I can do a lot of things. I always say like, oh, I can do a lot of things good, but I can't do one thing great. I can cook pretty good. I can draw pretty good. I can do some things really good, but I'm not great at any of them. And so I'm taking this moment to also be like, maybe let me focus on like really one thing and kind of really pay attention to this one thing. Because I could, just like a TV show, you can be watching 3-4 TV shows and be invested in all of them. But it's like, I think with a book, it's like, and kind of a whole mindset, I think you kind of need to focus on it, solely focus on that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do at the present moment, even though low-key I still have a lot of side projects going on. That's kind of what I'm trying to do. It's using that as an opportunity, because I do have more time, obviously, because I'm not working 40 hours a week. So I have that time to, really, I'm not reading it, but I'm listening to the book on Audible. I have a code. No, I don't. No code. It's all Jack 10% off. I know, for 10% off your next Audible book. But so I'm just kind of really taking the moment. I thought I'd try something different, because I'm a reader. I like to read, but I want to focus more on my listening skills, because I consider myself a good listener, but I want to be a better listener. So I want to see if I can really kind of absorb, because in school, although I'm a good listener to people, in school I was like not a good listener. I was like drawing on my paper. I'm sure you were doing the same thing.
Well, if you weren't a good listener, I was straight up deaf.
Oh.
Couldn't hear anything.
So I'm kind of taking this as a moment like somebody's teaching me something new, and I'm gonna try and listen to it and try and absorb it, as opposed to like listening to. And that's why when I listen to it, I go on a walk. I'm not like listening to it while I'm cooking or while I'm drawing or doing something else. I'm listening to it while I'm just walking and enjoying the scenery. So that's kind of why I'm trying something new.
Don't crash, because I got the Eckhart Tolle's voice, you know.
Oh my gosh, yes. That's the thing about his voice is very, I don't want to say it's soothing, but it's not
different.
Exciting.
It's different.
Yeah, it's different. It's not an exciting. There's not a lot of inflection. It's not monotone, but it's not exactly cheery, right? I would say it's like,
he's all, welcome to the new earth. Thank you for listening. That's how he talks.
That's exactly how he talks. He has like a,
but with the Canadian accent.
No, he's from the UK.
From the UK.
Yeah, so he has like, but it's not even a strong like.
It's like he's falling asleep.
Yeah.
He's so deep in meditation that he stayed
really
asleep.
Is. Even when he tells a story, like when in his
he'll wait
book,
a minute.
Well, he tells it, but it's not. There's nothing exciting about the story in terms of like when you're reiterating a story, you kind of have a little bit more excitement, or you have like you kind of talk the different parts.
No,
of the
no
people.
Storytelling.
No storytelling skills at all. No, it's just like reading from a script. In the same tone, whether he's talking about mind blowing information or he's talking about a simple story, it's all the same.
You know who was really good at making people cry with storytelling was Wayne Dyer.
Yeah,
he would always make people cry.
Yeah, he's very passionate about. You could tell he's like very passionate about what he does, and so that shows in his teachings and in his storytelling. He's a far better storyteller than Eckhart Tolle, for sure.
Wow. Rest in peace, Wayne Dyer.
Rest in peace. When he died
2 years ago, I think. Huh? Yeah. And then Louise Hay died like a month later or something. Yeah. It was pretty crazy.
Yeah. I was actually watching a kind of, I don't want to say so relevant to the time that we're going through right now, but I was watching a documentary on Margaret Atwood, who did the Handmaid's Tale.
Never heard of that.
Now, see, the Handmaid's Tale you would like, because it's like this dystopian future where women are basically all their rights are taken away.
Oh my God!
Yeah, it's on Hulu. Crazy. It's like on 3 seasons already, but
it's all in the year 1300.
No, it takes place literally. It's only like a year or two ahead of our time. So it's very. I think it takes the show takes place. I want to say like the year it actually came out. So it came out in probably like 2016, and I think that's when the story started in the present time. But she's the author of the book. It's like a short story, and it talks about like this, basically where all the governments are kind of a world order, and all the women's rights are taken away, and I guess like women stop having babies. They become sterile, so only certain women who are still, they're kind of like herded away from like society and used to basically like repopulate the world.
It's a Netflix show?
No, Hulu.
Oh, Hulu. I have Hulu.
Yeah.
I never use it.
No?
No, it came with the subscription that I never subscribed to, and it's one of those things.
You might like it. It's like I was saying, it's very dystopian, but particularly with to do with women. But it does talk about like it's basically this martial law, dissolution of government, and so it's kind of where
I'll look into that. Yeah.
So it's interesting. So I was watching that and just kind of her observation of society. I like to get perspectives from comedians and like people who comment on culture.
Oh, don't get me started with comedians. I mean, this is already, it's okay.
Who are we referring to?
All of them, mostly. Yeah.
What do you think they're taking this time to do? We're talking about your SNL.
Oh yeah, yeah. Let's talk about quarantine. Back a little bit on quarantine and celebrities and comedians. Right. All of a sudden, you start to realize that these comedians aren't funny anymore.
They don't have an audience to play to.
Yeah, they don't have nobody.
Camera.
Yeah, the audience is not. Some of them, I think, with Tom Hanks, they put like a fake audience on Saturday Night Live. But but it's just like they're kind of soulless. It's weird.
Well, you know what is interesting, and going back to Eckhart Tolle's, he talks about celebrities in his book, and he says that because he talks a lot about the ego, and typically like egos are associated with actors and musicians and stuff. So he talks about how it's really difficult for celebrities to have relationships or to kind of be out of the spotlight because they subconsciously believe they belong to the world. They belong to us because we kind of give them a purpose to entertain. So it's kind of like right now how you said, like, oh, celebrities are so annoying right now. And they're like, doing their little videos and stuff because I think it's really affecting them because they feel like that they belong to the world and they need to like put out their stuff. They need to like, we need to know what they're doing and like, they need to entertain us,
Or in other words, the DSM-5 Bible of psychology deems them as psychopaths, or sociopaths. Like, I'm for real. Yeah, they're really I wouldn't even say they're in the spectrum. They probably qualify for a lot of them, and that's mostly people that are just so gun ho to be in the public arena and like me and. It's just that kind of consciousness I hope goes away. It's like we can't be living in a like political high school election, popularity contest. It's always those kind of people are the ones that go into politics locally and state and federal. It's just like, really, like look at take a time when you're in reflection mode, right? Because it's a quarantine. Ask yourself if Jorge Ramos or anybody that you're looking at and hearing the news from, or your favorite politicians, like, are they really offering anything of value? You know what I'm saying? And it's like your own inner self will tell you the truth. It's like, remember when we were at the buffet one time and I told you, I'm like, Jack, I'm going to read you all these people's names and just close your eyes, okay? And then when you close your eyes, imagine their face and then you tell me whether you trust them or not. Like 90% of the people that I mentioned on both sides of the aisle were untrustworthy. Yeah. So the quarantine helps us be in our inner self, and we're getting a lot of information through our inner workings, but we need to like open some windows.
Yeah, I mean, essentially the entertainment industry, I mean, even the sports industry, I mean, we just like completely shut the power off on them. And I think celebrities more so than athletes are really struggling to be connected with their audience or their perceived audience. They're trying to stay connected with them because they feel like they're essential in these times. And I think that part of that is their ego talking, and part of that, there's some truth to that, because I think that people naturally gravitate to entertainment when they're feeling like it's a stressful time. Again, their perception of what kind of time it is. But I think what's interesting to me is the sports people who in the sports, it's the people that are affected because there's like fanatical like sports fans. Yeah. And so there's like a lot of people who are upset about the Kentucky Derby, about NASCAR, about baseball season. They're like really upset.
They are.
And they're like completely angry that this is happening because their
paradigm is like
exactly
is messed.
Yeah. So it's very interesting to see like the chupon being taken away, the nipple being taken away from people who put a lot of stock into something. Like they allow themselves to be defined by by a sports event, being a sports fan. You look at I'm a Cowboys fan. Like that's part of like
That's their identity. Yeah, it's crazy.
So it's like you take that away because they put so much stock. And we're talking about
It's
this
so
before.
true,
It
though.
takes put so much stock in being a Cowboys fan.
Yeah.
Take that away from them. I mean, like, what are they left with?
Well, I said like Raiders or 49er fans.
Yeah.
They're like really hardcore. You know, one thing I do want to throw out as a challenge, right, is I've always said like the best way to understand news, for example, is to take a time of reflection when you're listening or watching the news to ask yourself, what am I feeling when they're telling me this story or they're speaking to me through these airwaves, whether it's on TV or on the radio? What are they trying to make me feel? That is a very important question to ask yourself when you're hearing other people, right? Are they making me feel angry, upset, worried, patriotic? Like what is it that they're trying to make you feel?
Yeah.
But I'm going to take it one step further, okay?
Okay.
Take a time and see the movies that you're watching during this time in the quarantine, and the music that you're listening to, the music that you've listened to in the past, right? What messages are you receiving during this quarantine, right? We're already stressed enough, right? Do we want to be listening to like rap music about killing people and the pimps and hoes and all that? Does that add value to the way that we're currently feeling or the movies that we're watching, right? So it's just a challenge for people to kind of be more conscious to see what are these images and sounds and lyrics or people talking on the radio or on the news, what are they making me feel at the time that I'm experiencing this? And then just take an inventory, and it's just, hey, this is part of the detox, right? It's like, oh shit, I was listening to the wrong network or the wrong music so it's just something to throw out there.
Yeah. And I think that this is, even if you're not consciously trying to do that, you are maybe taking stock of more of what you're contributing your time to and what you're allowing yourself or your children to watch on TV or to listen to on the radio. Because before, let's talk about being plugged in. We're just being plugged in. We're on autopilot. We're not really paying attention to like what the music is playing in the background or what the newscaster is saying. But we are receiving the message, even though we're not necessarily listening to it. It's still sending out its message to you subliminally. You maybe just have it in the background, but it's like now it's like, like I'll be honest, like obviously, you and I, we watch the news, we're up to date on current events, and obviously we have to listen to different narratives that are being put out there in the news. And like you said, like, you asked me, how often am I listening to the news and stuff? And, it's like for me, I was like listening round the clock because, being in the work field, it's kind of like you want to see how you're going to be affected by, your local government and what decisions they're making. You want to be informed. But then it's like after that, okay, I'm informed. I know that I'm going to be not working till then. I got to wear my mask here. I can't go there, whatever. Okay, but then it's like, and then I start, receiving beyond just the information. I'm starting to have a little anxiety or feel really drained after listening to that press conference at 2 p.m. every single day. I'm starting to feel kind of affected by it. So, I had to take a moment to kind of snap out and be like, what? I don't need to be listening. I'm going to put on some Motown music and just feel good and go and start dinner. I'm not going to, while I'm cooking dinner, which I love to do, I love to cook, listen to some tonteria on my Alexa. And she's probably listening to us right now.
Oh, shit. You turned it up.
So, those are just kind of things that, I have to be conscious of, because just my old way of doing things, like, it's just like, why am I doing that for? What am I getting from that? What is it? Is it really adding to my life to listen to someone's commentary, political, social commentary on the situation? So it's just, again, going back to being present. I really should have been focused on my chopping my bell peppers, right? Enjoying the smell of the bell pepper, or and it's just it's really, somebody who listens to different media channels, and I don't watch it on TV because I don't have access. So a lot of what I listen to is on the radio. So I listen to the different major news networks with their different varying narratives, right? So it's like there's a lot of confusion out there, and Daniel and I have these conversations a lot. Like, this Fox is putting this, CNN's putting that, MSNBC is saying this, New York Times is saying that, and it's like there's a different narrative that each of them are talking about, and somewhere in between all of that is what's really going on. So there's just a lot to decipher.
I have another challenge. Right? It's like, God damn, this guy with his challenges. No, like, just as an experiment. Okay, I want you to go to univision.com. Okay, the Spanish network, and there's like 4 or 5 little tabs on the top. Mm-hmm. So before you go to the 5 little tabs on the top.
On a side note, I sent Daniel this link.
Okay? Oh my God, he did. I got pretty triggered this week because of it. Because so go through the whole website, and not the whole website. Go through the front page and look at the content on the front page, and ask yourself, am I being provided as anything of value? And what are they trying to make me feel? Read the headlines, see the pictures, etc. Mm-hmm. Then go up and click on each of the little 4 tabs of their little sections that they have at the very top for the website. And then go into the same tabs and ask yourself, does this offer anything of value for myself? Yeah. Each one of those tabs, I 100% encourage you to go and do that. And then, that's what I'm mentioning about how the messages that we're receiving, right? And at least in Univision, that's like your number one news source for most of all the Latin American people here in the United States. And look at the messages they're receiving. Yeah.
It's, us, our gente over here, our Latinos, we can be very dramatic. There's a reason that, the drama on the Spanish soap operas is very high. But like Daniel's saying, the narrative can be very sensationalized, being filtered through the news, the media in Latin America. So it's if you go check it out, you'll see that things are very sensationalized, or they're very there's definitely a narrative that they're pushing in terms of the information that's being put out. So yeah, I sent Daniel that because we always kind of joke about it, like, there's a kind of like a, what would you call it, like a news show, kind of like
Primer Impacto?
The Primer Impacto. It's kind of what we call it. It's kind of like 2020. It's kind of like it.
Oh, yeah. It's kind of like 60 Minutes or something.
But it's like very, it's like the headlines and the music
so
is
extreme.
It's very like, it's very set to create a lot of anxiety and fear around the situation.
It's just, that's how like these Univision and Telemundo, TV Azteca, they're all connected in the same way how they present their information. Yeah. I'll let you all to figure out whether you're being manipulated or not. But I mean, most of it is novelas,
it's
soccer.
Kind of in between. And what's funny is, there's kind of, because there's not a lot of Spanish language programming or stations, it's kind of like if you watch a certain station, you know what to expect in between your soap operas. You're getting a lot of news bites and shows that kind of keep you. It's like, oh well, I'm just gonna watch Primer Impacto because you know the novela comes on a las 9, and I'm just gonna watch Primer Impacto until this other novela comes on. So you have it on there while you're cooking or while you're waiting for the next novela, and they're just getting you. They already got you because they got you in front of the TV for the next novela, because there's usually like 3 novelas or something, you know.
Yeah, and it's and the news that they say is the absolute truth. Oh my God. Yeah, believe Jorge Ramos from all people.
Yeah.
It's like,
so it's, you know, it's coming from all angles. I mean, I can't really say, you know, in other countries, I don't really
it's probably
know,
the same.
You know, I don't know, especially the Asian countries. I mean, that would be interesting too, to kind of see what their narrative looks like, you know, considering that,